Hello, everyone. It's Aditi from Raising World Children. As you know, I am the founder of the magazine, which is bringing voices together from all around the world to talk about topics that affect us in our daily lives. And this, in turn, affects our businesses, our parenting, and every small nuances that we deal with. At Raising World Children, we are starting a new thing right now. Is I'm going to be interviewing people because not everyone has time to write. And as we know that you all like to see some things and see a window into people's lives. So that's what we're going to do now. With me, I have Deepa Ramachandran, who is a tax strategist and a business owner. She is from Chicago, and she has wonderfully and graciously accepted our invite to be featured on Raising World Children. Thank you so much, Deepa, for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Can you tell us something about you?
Sure. So I'm from Chicago. I have my tax practice. We have two locations here, and I am also married for 22 years to the same guy,
Wow.
and have two kids, 21 and 18, both of whom have autism. So being a mom is also a full-time job for me. And my in-laws are here in Chicago. My own family is in India. So yeah, we really have a very worldwide family.
That is the case with a lot of people these days, isn't it? We are all from different parts of the world, and we all come together, and then we separate, and then we come together. I think that's a very global perspective that we all have.
Absolutely, and it's very invaluable in when you start your own family. You have so many different perspectives to take into account. You have all these resources and facilities in different parts of the world that you never knew about. So I would say the world becoming a smaller place is really a very, very good thing.
Yes, it is. The world is a very small place, but it seems that day by day we all are getting separated because of our smartphones or because of the fact that we are so involved in our own lives. So, like at Raising World Children, we are trying to get people to see the window into someone else's life, which maybe people don't really talk much about. So, I was really I admire you for the fact that you are so willing to talk about how you found out about your kids having autism, and tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So one big advantage that we have is my husband is a physician. He's a medical doctor.
Oh,
so with my older child, when she was born fine. And over a period of time, I'm not anti-vax at all. But I know that it had something to do with it because I could see my daughter starting to pull away from us. And then with the cocktail of vaccinations that she got at a certain time, I think her system just became overwhelmed. And the child that was happy and bubbly and talking and answering questions suddenly wouldn't look at us, wouldn't talk to us, wouldn't respond, nothing. So one fine morning, she was just gone. So it was very clearly obvious what was happening with her. And at that point, autism was not a household word because my daughter is 21 now. She's one of the oldest children in mainstream autism. So it was a shock to us. And then we set out on a journey to find out what this is. And at that point, we just had Rain Man, the movie, to compare to. And our daughter never really looked anything like that. So it was a journey to find out. And we were led around a lot of different paths. And it took almost 2 years to put a word to it and to get a diagnosis and then to find services. So this was in the mid-90s. So that was that path. But while we were doing that, I was already pregnant with our second daughter. So we did a lot of genetic testing, and everyone assured us that, oh no, the occurrence of that is just 1 in 100 families. Well, there has to be somebody who falls in the 1 in 100. So that was us. So we're extra special. And my second daughter, though, we were very careful with her. We put her into therapy very quickly. And so she's less intense on the spectrum. She has verbal skills. She has a lot of social skills as well. But they're both there. They're both on the spectrum. They both have very differently able. They have different abilities. They have different strengths. And so, yeah, that was just, and it seems like so long ago, but it was a struggle. But at this point, we look back and we're like, wow, you tend to forget because when they do come along, you live in the moment, you see how far they've come, and it's actually a good thing.
Yes. And you mentioned about the vaccinations. You believe that they were a part of it, and that is something very new to me. So, did you vaccinate your second child?
We did
Okay.
vaccinate her. So like I said,
Okay.
I'm not anti-vax at all. I
Okay.
just believe that we didn't have to dump it all in together, that
Okay.
kind of overwhelmed the child system. So for my younger one, we spread them out.
All
We were
right.
very careful with the schedules, and we just made sure that she had a lot of time to absorb the intensity of the vaccine. So um, yeah, and I have zero data to prove that that was the cause of my second daughter being more social. I have zero data. I'm not even going to comment on it. It just so happened that my second daughter dealt with the autism better, and maybe because we were more informed as parents and we got her into the system faster as parents. So
So, so when all this was happening, were you in US or were you in India?
we were in US.
Okay.
I came over here. My husband has always been born and brought up here, so
Okay.
he's almost an American. My I came over right after I was married, so both the kids were born here, and we fell right into the system here. The system really takes care of you here. It really helps you deal with everything right from early childhood all the way up to school, high school.
That's wonderful to hear that you had a good support system, at least in terms of the system. It's wonderful to know that, if you fall back, there is something to fall back on, at least to get information and how to process it. It cannot be easy, no matter how much support you have or how much information you get, but at least you have that bit of knowledge trickling in, right?
Oh, yes, yes, absolutely. Um, this When we got the first autism diagnosis, it was technically the dark ages of autism. There was very little knowledge or research out there. So we had to fight our way through a lot of things. But the thing is, we were fighting with people who were already empathetic to our situation. So when we went up against the schools and said, you need to provide more services, they actually did, or they found different ways to provide that to us. So what we did was effectively break down the walls so the kids coming behind had an easier path. They already had a path, they just had to walk down it.
Oh
So
my
um,
goodness.
it was kind of troublesome when we were there, but eventually it all worked out, and both my kids are in really good places, and so I don't
That's
have
wonderful.
any complaints about it.
That is wonderful. I mean, to come out of it with such a positive attitude, my admiration for you has increased multifold now, just
No,
because
thank
of the
you.
fact that, I mean, it is a lot of people come out bitter and a lot of people have a lot of negativity. But to be able to see that, what you did opened doors for other people. And of course, I'm sure it was a very hard journey. I'm sure I mean, what you're saying is not even half of or quarter of what you experienced. But to be so positive about it is wonderful. So thank you for that, for doing that for other people.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. You're welcome. And it's just part of your journey. Whatever, there's a journey that you choose, and this was just our journey. So yeah.
So can you give us an example of the kind of service that you asked the schools to provide, and then they agreed to change?
Sure. So previously, schools had no special ed at all, right?
Okay.
Special ed was considered like a physical disability. Like if a child was in a wheelchair, you got assistance for that, but they still went into the regular classrooms.
Okay.
So there was no concept of special ed for ADD or ADHD or any kind of the letters together you string to get a new diagnosis these days. There was no such services. So what we campaigned for was developmental therapy when the kids were little. So there's applied behavior analysis, there's floor time, there's all these different developmental therapies. We campaigned to bring that into the schools. So they started services for us right at 18 months. So the moment the child turned 18 months, you went into the school system, which you usually don't enter until kindergarten.
Yes.
So they got a good 2.5, 3.5, depending on when they went to kindergarten, a good 2.5 to 3.5 years of preschool services. So they got classroom services. In the afternoon, they got therapy. They got some speech pathologists coming in, occupational therapists coming in. So they got such a cocktail of services for about 6 hours a day. And school provided that entirely. They hired extra staff. They opened up extra rooms for us. So that made a huge difference to put a child on a routine, teach them basic skills, teach them. Kids with autism don't have a good brain, they have intellect, they can learn facts and figures, and they're whizzes at math and reading and things like that. What they need to learn is when you go to the bathroom, you need to shut the door. It's those type of practical skills that they need to learn. Or, they're whizzes on iPads and phones and things like that. But when you open a door, you need to look to see if it's a stranger. Don't just randomly open the door. Or when you're crossing a street, that car can come and hit you. Those kind of, social cues, they have no idea about danger or fear or anything like that. So those are the things that really needed to be stressed as far as therapy. They did great in school, but these other things, so that was the focus of what we wanted for them, me and all the other parents.
I'm sure to be how do you think all of that helped them? Like, I mean, you have personally at home also, you must be doing different things, right? So what kind of things were you doing at home differently? Because this is at school, and of course there is only a certain amount of time kids are in school.
Right.
And you have been, I think, a working mom.
Yes.
Yes.
I didn't work for the first 10 years. Until my
Okay.
older daughter was 10, I stayed
All
home.
right.
Now
Okay.
she's home. So I've been back full-time in the workforce for almost a decade.
All
But
right.
what we did at home was things like, so living in the community, existing in the community is a difficult thing, right? Because they don't
Okay.
understand that concept necessarily. So like going to the store, for example, we go to the grocery store, we take all the things, put it in our cart, we go to checkout, we pay for it and leave. The concept that picking something up at the grocery store means you need to pay for it, they don't get that. So those are the things I would do. Like when we went to the grocery store and they pick something up, they would open it up and just start eating it right in the store, which you would think, hey, wait a second, what is this child doing? They just didn't know. So it was training that you pick something up, you put it in the cart, you wait till we get to checkout and we pay for it, then you can eat it. So those kind of things, it took months, years sometimes to just get those basic concepts. You have to go to the doctor every year because school needs a physical form. They would freak out when they went to the doctor. They were so scared. So it was a matter of reading social stories to them, like, reading a book about going to a doctor. Doctor is a nice person. They're not going to hurt you, but they are going to touch you, stethoscope, and they're going to take your blood pressure, those type of things. So just very, very practical day-to-day life things I had to work on. Going to the dentist. We hate going to the dentist. How am I going to get that child to open her mouth and, the dentist pulls out scary little tools. So those were the things. And just working through that has made them less scared. Knowing ahead of time what to expect has made a huge difference in how they react to those things.
Okay. It is what you have said actually are things that I have been working on with my 3-year-old, that don't you have to wait to pay and all these. But I'm sure with autism, what I'm understanding is it takes longer for them to process things. I mean, of course, depends on where they are on the spectrum, as what I've heard. But these are, like, I'm learning, because honestly I don't really know anyone personally, so it is really interesting to me to hear what you have to say about it. Is there any advice you have for parents out there who might be struggling, or for how they would deal with their kids? Do you have any?
Yes. Oh, and I have plenty of it.
Let's go step by step.
Well, my main advice is it'll all work out. Okay, it's just going to take longer. So my kids were only potty trained at 5 and 6. Most kids are potty trained by 2 and 3. So it just takes longer. And so the more complicated tasks are going to take a lot longer. So I'm not expecting my kids to ever drive, but if they want to drive, they're not going to drive at 20, they're going to drive at 30. Or I'm expecting them to be independent, live by themselves. That's not going to happen at 25. It may happen at 40. But with them, it's just a matter of time. It's a developmental delay. So the development of the brain typically takes a lot longer. The more difficult the task, the longer it's going to take. And that's all there is to it. So is to know that the child will eventually be exactly what you wanted them to be. Maybe not exactly, but you get the idea. Is they will be independent. They will be functioning. Just give it some time. They'll get there. It's going to take a lot of effort on your part. It's not by any means simple. It's not by any means straightforward. It's going to be a lot of detours on the path. They're not going to be the rocket scientist. They're going to be something completely different. But that's okay, because that's their path in life.
Yeah. And since your husband is a physician, do you now have signs that you tell parents to look out for? If, I mean, I'm sure not everyone, but if someone comes to you and asks that what are the signs that a child might be having autism, so what would you tell to them?
So always compare. Okay, so
That's
that's against the typical advice, right? But
yes.
my thing is always compare your child to somebody's child who you know is typical, because the sooner you catch it, and this is not to make yourself feel bad, this is the sooner you catch it, the faster you can get the child into a program where they're given the intensive therapies that they need, so they can get to the other side faster, right? They can. So always compare. If your child is not answering questions, not responding, physical development is behind, always go get help or go ask the school district, or go ask if you know like a physical therapist, occupational therapist, speech therapist. Always go ask. If you have an older child to compare to, make that comparison. If your child is 6 months delayed, always look into it. Yeah, that's my advice. Compare.
Okay. Oh, awesome. Okay, so that's something that everyone needs to be aware of, that, of course, we all say that you need to not compare, but yes, there is a certain point of time when you as a parent would instinctively feel that, there might be something wrong. So pay attention to the cues. I think that's what we're talking about, right?
Exactly. That's
Yes.
exactly what we're talking about.
Yes.
Yes.
And so you've been living this life. I mean, you would say it is a certain kind of lifestyle where you are, because of course your daughters, thankfully, they're doing very well, but you have been on this journey. So how do you think it has changed you as a person? How do you think how different are you now from when you were, I mean, of course, everyone's different with age, but how has the dealing with autism changed your mentality?
Oh my God. That's a topic that I cannot stop talking about. So I'm gonna try and keep it concise. So as a mother, I was always living in my head. I consider myself, I always want more knowledge, and I still do. I'm always reading something. I'm always on the pursuit of more knowledge, right? So what has happened with these kids is because they're not always verbal, and the communication can take a lot of time. I've learned to rely on my instinct and my gut instinct, probably more than most mothers. Because as mothers, the kids come out and we have a gut instinct on they're hungry, they're sleepy, that type
Yes.
of thing.
Yes.
But even though my kids are now teens and past teens, my gut instinct has grown stronger, only stronger. So I've learned this whole nonverbal communication thing with them. And what that's helped me with is noticing patterns. So if I put a lot of stock into body language. So if I'm sitting in front of a client and they kind of constrict or they move back, I can almost tell it's like, okay, I'm overwhelming them, because that's what my kids would do. They would kind of just move back.
Yes.
So I sense I'm overwhelming a client. So now it's time to stop talking and ask them, how are you feeling? Is this too much? Do you want me to scale back? Do you want to say something? Do you have a question? So it's really gotten me to pay more attention to what people are not saying, as opposed to what they're saying, because what they're not saying is as much as what they're what they're saying. So yes, it's given me a better idea, it's just made me observe more and be more empathetic and be more understanding that verbal communication is not it. It's probably 30 to 40%. There's so much more that we don't pay attention to.
Yes, of course. Well, I think that's about it for now. And is there anything that you would like to tell people about yourself and your business, and about how you would like them to connect with you?
Oh, sure. So I have two websites. I have acumencpa.com. That is my tax business, and I also consult with business owners, mainly women, because I also know that there's a lot of fear around dealing with money, a lot of fear around being a breadwinner and that type of, So my deeparamchandran.com. That's my consulting website. I talk over a lot of those money mindset type issues and that type of thing. So that's how you can connect with me. I'm on Facebook, and I'm active there. I just love meeting new people. And yeah, that's about it.
That's wonderful. So you all can find those links in the space below, and it would be wonderful if you ever have any needs. I know for a fact that Deepa will surely hold your hand from beginning to end, because that's the feeling I'm getting from her. Thank you so much, Deepa, for sharing your life story and your journey with us. It has been such a wonderful experience.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor.